Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivsari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivsari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Radhe Golokananda Bhagwan Ki
Jai. So we only have 3 paragraphs left in the purport. Gajendra, I got you backwards. So after we do the verses again, then we'll just go to the last 3.
The last 3 paragraphs.
Last 3 paragraphs of the purport.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we start, Prabhuji?
You start, Prabhuji.
Amani tvamadam bhivatvam insam kshanti rajarvam acharya pasanam shocham sterya atma vinigraha indriyarteshu vairagya mana ahankar evuche janam mrityu jara vyadhi dukha doshanudarshanam asaktirana bhishvangah putra dare grihadishu nityam cha samchitatvam ishtanishtopapatishu mai charanya yogena bhakti ravya vicharini vivikta desha sheve vitvam pratirjana sansadi adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam etagyanamiti prokta jnanam yadato anyatha. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth, all these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
So we're starting with the paragraphs that says, as far as self-realization is concerned. Third from the end, yes. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the supersoul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the supersoul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti or devotional service is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction.
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 11, this is explained. Vadanti tat tadvavidas tadvanya jnanam advayam. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that the self is realized in 3 different phases, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge.
Savitaji?
Beginning from the practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead. This process is just like a staircase, beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now, on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or the third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge.
Nishant?
Hare Krishna. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God, because of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Shiva Prabhu?
The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amritiva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. Hare Krishna.
So we finally finished this long purport. Are there any questions or realizations or comments about any of these paragraphs, last three paragraphs?
Yeah, I had an interesting discussion yesterday at a very pleasant family that I borrowed for Thanksgiving, very nice friends. And there's a couple and their son, and they had their nephew and all their so forth. Also there. The son of the couple is a computer professional. He's in his mid-20s. He's just graduated from SC State. Very smart as a whip. But absolutely, with a materialistic philosophy, like so many people in tech are. And without acknowledging even the existence of anything beyond the physical plane, there was no way of discussing not just God, but even the subtle, what makes poetry, what makes music. So even to approach something like an incarnation of God, or anything having to do with what we're all about as devotees, is impossible when everything has to be only in the physical plane and nothing else exists. So the problem is really stark.
Yeah, it's very stark in this age. That's why Lord Chaitanya has prescribed the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, because for the very, very materialistic and those who cannot consider anything other than matter, the only way to get them to be able to break that cycle, and it's kind of like turning the heat up a little bit on under an ice cube and starting it to melt, is the chanting of the holy name, or we prasadam, or maybe they get a book and they just look at it and they even dismiss it, but they at least get a chance to hear some sort of transcendental sound vibration. But it is very difficult for those who the materialistic mentality can't stretch itself to the point of understanding anything beyond matter.
Yeah, and actually, I had a similar experience what Bill Prabhu is saying. And I was talking to a few students from University of Michigan, and we are just talking in general about everything. And they cannot go beyond the physical plane, as Bill Prabhu is saying. There's no concept of soul. So who are you, right? So I'm this body then, but that body is going to, be disseminated. Then, no, I'm this mind. Oh no, I'm this brain. But then that many times the brain doesn't work, but the body is still running. So you cannot be brain.
And the brain's
then-
going to die too.
Yeah. So the point is that fact that, hey, there's something called soul itself is not there. So at least, with this satsang, we are fortunate enough to understand that difference, that, hey, there's a physical body, there's a shuttle body, there's a soul, right? And even going beyond the soul, which is what is being mentioned in this, is really good to know.
And the conception of Krishna is the most exalted conception, understanding of God. But it's, as it says here in the first paragraph we read, it says that that bhakti yoga is especially practical, because this person who's an atheist or a materialist can still do service to the Lord or to a devotee without even knowing they're doing service. So that, for example, maybe someone's a doctor, but they're an atheist and they don't have any belief in God, but they have a chance to do some service and they happen to treat a devotee or to offer medical services to a temple or some devotees. They make some advancement for that service. So bhakti yoga has this aspect in it where even those who are very far away, somehow or other, they can get into the influence of the Supreme Lord.
We were reading in the Mukunda Mala Stotra on Monday how Srila Prabhupada explains how this divine consciousness is present in everyone. But the materialistic mentality is to oppress it and try to squeeze it out of one's life. But it is impossible, because that's what defines us as living entities, as divine personalities, transcendentalists. We're transcendental beings. And so even though a person may be completely materialistic, still that flame is there, it can never be extinguished. So there must be a way to somehow or other reach to that point. And sometimes it's by giving somebody some prasadam, or by having somebody listen to a kirtan, or by seeing the devotees chanting in the street. There are so many ways, but that divine consciousness can never be eliminated. Never, never.
Maybe they see a Rath Yatra card.
Yeah.
And they go, wow, what's that? And there's some recognition.
That's why the presence of the devotees in public is very important, because there is no hope. Otherwise, there is no hope.
They're surrounded by materialism.
Yeah. How strongly one is conditioned is.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this first paragraph, also it talks about how that this bhakti conception we're learning and making part of our life, it's a very elevated consciousness. And it says here actually that the individual soul and the super soul cannot be one. I mean, that's oftentimes immature. The first thing that this young computer scientist is going to get into, if he ever gets into spiritual life, will be that we're all one. That we're one. He'll maybe there'll be some kind of, he'll click into some idea that the energy is eternal and therefore I'm energy and God, whatever. But the understanding in bhakti is that there has to be an individual soul and a supreme soul to relate to each other in love.
Relationship.
It's a relationship. And that's, and short of that, everybody in this material world, if the young computer fellow meets a pretty girl, he's going to be thinking much more about the pretty girl than his computers, because there's love there. But the eternal love is in the Supreme Lord. And that is a perfect love. The girl may not like computers after a while, or they may break up and whatever happens in the material world. But we're looking for that love, that relationship. And the Supreme Lord, Supreme is eternal. Nityam. Nityo Nityanam, Nityam Nityananam, Chaitanas Chaitananam. He's the eternal of all eternals and the sentient of everybody.
In our philosophical system, theological system, there are three elements that are present, that have to be present to make this a scientific process. One is sambandha, and sambandha is knowledge of the relationship. First, understanding who we are, then understanding who the Supreme Lord and understanding material nature and how we relate to matter and how we relate to the Supreme Lord. That's called Sambandha. Then there is Avideya. Avideya is the practice by which this knowledge in Sambandha becomes totally realized. And that is moving us forth toward the last stage, which is Prayojan, and that is the goal. And the goal is pure love for the Supreme Lord. So all these books we're reading, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar of Devotion, they all are following this process of Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojan. It's not just a matter of learning about, but actually giving us a method by which this information becomes real. And how with that realization, then we can move forward toward the goal.
And Vyajendraji, thank you for highlighting that. The second paragraph talks about what is the perfection of knowledge. And if we can refer to this verse of the Bhagavatam of 1:2:11, it's a very important verse.
Oh, it's crucial.
Yeah. And this really talks about the different levels of realization. 1:2:11, yeah. You can click right on it, I think, on there, and it'll go right there.
Yeah, go there.
1 to 11.
You have a link?
No, it doesn't link. Yes, Bill.
No, that's right. I was just
Oh, so 1
gesturing
to
in futility at my screen.
You have it on your computer?
I have it on already.
Yeah.
Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam jnanam advayam brahmeti pramaneti bhagavan iti shabhyate. So, learned souls, the tattva vida, the learned souls, they say Vedanti, that, tat, the absolute truth, tattvam, yaj, which is knowledge, which is a non-dual knowledge. That this non-dual knowledge, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, call this non-dual substance, they call it Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan. And so these are the three different levels of realization. Starting from the most elementary is the idea of understanding of Bhagavan, which is, not Bhagavan, Brahman, which is the energy of God. So this is what many scientists can begin to understand. They do their physics, they do their different kinds of science, and they begin to understand about energy and matter and energy, that they're constants. And then they see that everything is energy. And therefore, where is this energy coming from? And eventually they may come to a concept where we know there's an eternal source of energy and we're all part of that. And it's sort of this idea of all oneness. And now then further advanced is someone who's like a yogi who can actually see Krishna or the super soul, this Paramatma in the heart. And Paramatma, that is the expansion of Krishna who is residing within with every soul within the material world and even within the atom, so that the whole material world is pervaded by the presence of God, by the presence of Krishna through Paramatma. But the highest understanding is Bhagavan, which means that he has a locality in the spiritual world, which isn't limited like our localities. It's ever present and everywhere also, besides being a locality. And it's a spiritual personality called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Godhead being this universally, effulgent spiritual world, and that's the highest realization. And so as Gajendra did there, he highlighted that is the perfection of knowledge. We can know Krishna as a person,
which is the source of the Paramatma,
of the other two,
which is the source of the Brahman.
Yeah.
Everything comes, not only the understanding that Krishna is present as a Paramatma everywhere, but there is nothing that exists that is not the energy of the Supreme Lord anyway. We are surrounded by Krishna's presence in his form as energy, as the Paramatma in the heart. And by the desire of the heart to come to the perfectional stage of love. It's all Krishna. That's all Krishna, manifesting himself in different ways.
And as Gajendra has just highlighted, therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees or Vaishnavas. So we're so fortunate. And then it goes on to say, in other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. We are so fortunate because Prabhupada has actually brought this higher understanding that's available only usually to those who are very, very seriously advanced in the process of bhakti. He's brought it to people who aren't very advanced, like in the West, and made it available. So if we take up the process, we can actually enter into this highest understanding of Krishna.
It's like Gajendra Prabhu was talking about before, about there is not a possibility of conceiving of anything else but besides what's matter, what's around one. But Srila Prabhupada is bringing that possibility to us by saying, look, there is an alternative. And then we have the process of Sambandha and the process of Avideya to get to the goal. Sambandha is the knowledge, Avideya is the process. And he is giving us a process to eventually be able to penetrate and be able to pursue this path of perfection. So we're very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada came and brought us this alternative way of understanding reality. And this is capital R, reality, capital R, that which is always existing.
Any other thoughts? Not that I want to keep running on all
Okay.
whole.
But it can be useful. And I know, of course, there's been a lot of being spelled about this, about how this Trinity that we just discussed in the Hindu terms is analogous to the Christian Trinity.
In a way.
It has a way, yeah, in a way. The God, the Father, and the Holy, God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Yes.
The Holy Spirit would be
Holy
the
Spirit.
Paramatma, yeah.
But it serves a similar function.
It has some similarities, but
It's
it's not.
different.
It doesn't quite fit. But yeah, the idea is we can actually tell Christians when we preach to them that some of their ideas
We have a
have a place. Any other questions, Shiva ji,
Comments?
or anybody?
Yes, Prabhuji, like as we saw the first sentence, and as Mataji was saying that, there is Krishna everywhere, right? So in a way, there is no duality. Everything is Krishna. And I was trying to visualize what is the difference between wave and the depth of the ocean. In a way, they are both water, right? So, yeah, I mean, wave is part of the ocean. Ocean is both are water, right? But at the same time, I mean, the first line in this paragraph was that, like, there is absolute truth is the place where there is no subject and there is no object. Both are same, right?
But at the same time, the subject and object are there because there has to be two, a lover and a beloved, and there has to be servant and the served. There has to be this transcendental duality, so to speak.
There must be a hierarchy. The hierarchy is there, except that when we enter into a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, that becomes blurred. But there's always two, not just one.
Can't have love with
The
one.
hierarchy meaning that there is a supreme being and that everybody else is subordinate to him. But when we enter into a personal relationship, like I say, that line becomes blurred, and he allows us to have a very personal relationship with him.
Yeah, I think I would say that because the wave is there because the water is there, right? If water is not there, there will not be any wave.
No, not in any way. The
Yeah.
wave is easy to realize,
Yeah.
and the depth is very difficult.
Something I learned that if you say, I'm God, and you're not, they lock you up. If you say, we're all God, they may laugh at you, but they let you alone.
But I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting though. If wave says that I'm God, then that whole purpose is gone, right? Wave is there because of water is there. I think that's
Yeah, but
Prabhupada's one who said that we jivas are tiny samples of God. In other words, we have qualities which are the same as Krishna's in minute quantity. Yeah, because we're parts and parcels. So there is a definite relationship. And this is what's important, because if in Western Abrahamic religions, the soul really is totally divorced from the divine, and the idea being that it's polluted and it's sinful from original sin. But we know that the soul, as the Prabhupada says here in the purport, has existed eternally along with the Lord. It's just become separated. We've just become separated because we've chosen to turn our face from God, from Krishna, and become entangled in all this other stuff.
yeah, absolutely. You know, there is duality, and at the same time, there is non-duality. So there is yeah,
right. So,
That is
and
the
one of the
That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is called Achintya Veda Vedatattva, simultaneously one and different.
Inconceivable.
yep,
Conceivable,
Yep.
it's conceivable.
yeah, I think one of the Australia lectures of Swami Prabhupada, there was a question that, hey, if we are all part of God, why are we here, right? Why did God let us come here? And so to your comment, Swami Prabhupada said basically, hey, if a father tells his son or daughter that, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, at the end, if the son doesn't listen and he say, okay, fine, go and do it, we'll see what happens next. And I think that's what happened. So that's why we are here. We did not listen to Krishna, and we really wanted to come and enjoy the material world. So we are here, and now we have to go through this cycle of life, death, age, old disease, old age and disease and all.
But he's so kind that he sends pure devotees and persons with light from the spiritual world to give an opportunity for those fallen souls which have simply, gone off on their own, to understand that they have another place, which is their real place, which Prabhupada used the term constitutional position. Then the real position of ourselves, which is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, and in a loving relationship with the Supreme.
Yeah, like a father will keep still following his kids to make sure at some point they come back at the right place.
That's super soul. He's watching to make sure we somehow or other, but he's letting us make the mistakes we need to make to learn. Sometimes it's tough love. We make a lot of bad mistakes and we suffer, but that's what we have to do in order to become exhausted with our attempts to enjoy separate.
The point is that in order to love the Supreme Lord, we have to have our own desire to do so. So because we want to be separated, he allows us to just experience, so that eventually we'll come to our senses. And if we bump into saint who's showing us what is what and what the path is, and we want to take that path, because Krishna will never interfere with our limited freedom, never. We cannot be forced to love. It has to come from within, from the individual. So we're learning our lesson, and we're being guided by supremely exceptional personalities like Srila Prabhupada, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, like his father, and so we decide that maybe it's worthwhile checking into this. And that's why we're coming together, reading all these things and exchanging views,
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, another thing, Prabhuji, that really struck me is this line which says, beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth. I think the most important thing is we are talking about not even conceding the fact that there is an alternative reality. I think it all starts from the fact that we need to be humble, because as Gajendra Prabhu said, we basically turned our face and we came into this world. Now we want to go back to Godhead. We have to understand, we have to surrender, and we have to be humble about it. I think part of the problem is sometimes we are not humble. We think we know everything, even in the spiritual side. and then tend to ignore the fact that without being humble, we won't be able to achieve the overall understanding of Lord.
Such
So-
a good
That's a
good
great
point.
point.
And it is very important to see that of all these qualities of knowledge, humility is number one, and pridelessness is number two, free from pride, without which we cannot in any way
Yeah.
approach the Supreme Lord. Impossible.
Yeah, and then it's Gajendra to highlight, if anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It's clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly
It cannot
possible.
happen.
And
Impossible.
and actually up a little farther, it says, if anyone, what it says, down a little farther, to think oneself God is most puffed up. So this really happens a
It's
lot to,
ignorance, you know?
it happens a lot, this happens a lot to persons who begin to understand that this material world isn't the all in all. It is not our real home, but then they cannot stand the idea of thinking that somehow there is an overarching, powerful personality who controls everything. So they want to think that and because we have qualities like the Supreme Lord's, they may realize these qualities and they're thinking, oh, I'm just part of this great thing. I'm it. And this is
Ignorance.
an ignorance. This is arrogance.
And this ignorance is very romantic. And that's why a lot of people end up getting attracted to such notions that they are part of the Supreme, that representation of Supreme Lord. Yeah, there is a relationship and it's a very strong bonding, but at the end of the day, there is a very distinct duality, while there is a singular connection between the two.
Good point.
So,
It's a fact that in the beginning of the process, one may go through this stage, and one certainly can make some advancement in the understanding that the material world is not our home, but one can't go beyond a certain point. And if one really becomes offensive and ultimately, says, I'm God, then one is in very deep trouble spiritually, at least for a time, while one is in this sort of misconception. But that'll be worked out. But why not work it out quickly?
So I'm God, but I cannot lift the Golden Parvat. Oh, sorry, I forgot what I ate yesterday.
I
You know,
forgot what
I-
I ate today. Krishna never forgets anything.
Yeah, I have a headache. My teeth are falling out, and I'm God. Yes, right.
But the quickest way to humility is humiliation. And there's nothing quite as humiliating as being thrown in prison. And so I have linked on the chat to Prison Ministries by Pure Bhakti Yoga Society. And they do a great job with their prison outreach. And I highly recommend watching this video. It's finding out about that.
We've heard about this from another devotee also recently. He said, this, when one is a prisoner, you have a lot of time on your hands, and if you're smart, you might start thinking about why I'm here and why. And this world is a prison. We have a lot of time on our hands too.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you realize is that as long as you're in a body, you're in one room at a time. And if you're in one room at a time, you may as well, it's the same thing as if you're in a prison cell. If you're in one location, one body, stuck there, that's it, you're in prison. Forgive the ad.
No, we won't. Okay, what you're doing.
This is what Akhil Prabhu has said.
Oh, that's what he said. Okay. This Krishna ministry video. Oh yeah, I've seen part of this before. This is really good.
Sorry? So I just wanted to show the glimpse.
I've never seen this before. This is very good.
You can watch it, afterwards. Do you want to do one more shloka, Prabhuji, or?
I think we should not start another one because we won't have time to discuss.
Yeah, well, it's almost 5 minutes to 8.
If anybody has anything, what are some takeaways from our talk today? If we start 13, it's very, very deep, and it's we won't be able to do it.
Takeaways. That's
yeah.
good.
we won't be able to do it justice. Anybody have something, an aha moment today, or something that really you know, you learned something, or something you feel like you can apply in your life in devotion?
Yeah, maybe I can go first, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
So again, it's very evident that, you know, our chitta has to be pure, clean, because all these vrittis of aham and ignorance or false knowledge, all these are kind of, you know, polluting our heart and our chitta, because of which we cannot see the bottom of the lake, right? So yeah, so it's very important that, you know, associating with learned people, elevated people, ingesting like, you know, Krishna conscious materials like chanting and bhajans, thinking about Krishna, by which, like, you know, our chitta can be purified, and hence we can be more more compatible to progress in the spiritual journey, you know. So
Did that passage, did it help about the
yeah,
chitta?
yes, Mataji, absolutely.
Okay.
And
Thank
for
you.
those of you who are not using the terminology chitta, Prabhupada really calls it in many places the mirror of the mind,
Or the
and-
mirror of the heart.
or the mirror of the heart.
Yeah.
And the idea being is that it's the nexus between the spirit, between the soul and the subtle body. And as long as our chitta is clouded by material desires, then Krishna can't really appear there. I mean, he was appearing, but we can't see. So this is important for us to purify our consciousness, because the material body is more than just the 5 gross elements. It's also the subtle ones, which is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. And those are particularly difficult to deal with, except through, you know, spiritual practices.
Mhm.
Thank you, Shiva. Anybody else before we have our nice bhajan?
I think
Just be humble.
Be humble.
I think
Yes.
that's the first step to the Krishna
Yeah.
consciousness.
This thing about humility is it's not something that we can create. We can act humble, but to become humble, truly humble, is a product of following this process of Krishna consciousness. And then it automatically will be manifesting increasingly more and more so as we become more and more purified.
Mhm.
We
But,
cannot force ourselves to say, I'm humble. That doesn't work. We
Yeah.
can pretend, we can actually act humbly, but the real humility that is prescribed there is an item of knowledge. These items of knowledge are manifested by pure personalities who have achieved a very elevated state, and they're by nature humble.
And Krishna oftentimes makes arrangements for us to become humble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But that's the point. Humility is the first point that really
and
has to happen.
pridelessness.
And humility and pridelessness.
the other thing, Prabhuji, is that the process of bhakti is eternal, as this verse says. One thing is, because of it's eternal and it is very practical, we can all enjoy and also achieve the Lord. So many times what happens when we are praying or we are doing certain rituals, it may become a little bit more taxing. Bhakti is something where we can enjoy the Lord's companionship and also continue to move up. And I think that's the eternal optimism that bhakti gives. Because in this world where there's so much of despair, so much of problems, and we are all going through this, we are all trying to go through sometimes we may become depressed and we may not follow the process if it is more stringent. Bhakti allows us to do this with eternal optimism and and the companionship that we need to have with Lord. So I think it's a very powerful way of achieving what we want to do in Krishna consciousness by following the bhakti, because it is really it's you enjoy while doing it. It's not something that is taxing on you. It's not stressing out. It's not telling you that you have to do a certain thing in a certain time. You can do it at any time, but you can still continue to move forward in your spiritual journey.
That's correct.
It's described that Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but because of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare
Hare Rama
Krishna,
Hare Rama
Krishna,
Rama
Krishna,
Rama
Krishna,
Hare
because of
Hare.
the Maha Mantra, then Kali Yuga is the most fortunate age. So
The medicine is the strongest.
yeah, we have a very strong, powerful process that will pull us back to his lotus feet, or to his lotus
And
feet.
it's the easiest process is what is being mentioned too. Because in Satyug, you have to do like tapasya for thousands of years.
Mhm. And then in other yugas, there's so many. So in this yuga, we're not capable of doing all those things, but we can chant his name. And by chanting his name in a regular way, and ultimately purely, then we can completely realize our relationship with him
Under the guidance
under the guidance of a guru.
of the advanced devotee. Yeah.
Right. Nice
How
discussion.
do you all? Great discussion
Wow.
tonight. Wonderful.
Oh, is Monk?
Double check next week's schedule.
Yeah, we're scheduled.
Okay, next Friday. Good.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Friday, we're doing it again.
Oh, yeah. Is Rajendra going to be there Friday next
Yes.
week?
Yeah, I'm here next week.
Next week.
Okay.
After that, we'll.
And then
we'll
we will
pitch it.
be out of town for a while, but we are planning on continuing from wherever we are to have this program on Friday evenings for sure.
When we're out of town, we'll be in the Eastern time zone, so don't worry.
Yeah, we're still in the same time zone. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hear this bhajan.
Okay.
Govind Madhava Navanita Taskara Govind Madhava Navanita Taskara Sundarananda Gopala Hare Sundarananda Gopala Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Vasanahara Rasarasika Vipamaya Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Vasanahara Rasarasika Vipamaya Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Vasanahara Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natavara Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natavara Bhakti Vinodasraya Bhakti Vinodasraya Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natavara Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natavara Vilasa Hey Jasomati Nandana Brajaparanagara Gokula Randana Kara Madinana Brajaparanagara Gokula Randana Kana Gopi Paranadana Manano Manohara.
This indestructible $99 drone is now available in the US. This is an
Gopi Paranadana Madano Manohara Kali Damana Vidana Kali Ramana Vidana Amala Harena Amiya Vilasa Taskara Govind Madhavanita Taskara Govind Madhavanita Taskara Shri Radha Ballabha Vrindavana Natavara Bhakti Vinodasraya Hey Bhakti Vinodasraya Hey Bhakti Vinodasraya Hey Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan. Jai Parahan Shringan Shringare Jai Parahan Shringa Jayo Shringare Hey Jayo Vrindareve 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Haribo, Haribo. We're having a kirtan in the temple tomorrow evening from 6:30 to 8, and everybody's invited. If you can make it.
Or you can connect on Mayapur TV
Or Facebook.
Or Facebook, New Goloka Dham live.
But anyway, we'll sing Yasomati Nandana. Maybe not quite as melodiously as BB Govinda, but we'll do the best we can.
It's such a beautiful bhajan. It's a gorgeous bhajan. So we will sing it tomorrow, and then maybe when we get together next time, we'll all sing. We can all sing it together.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, till next week, or till we see you all
Tomorrow
again
evening,
tomorrow or Monday evening or whatever. We'll
Good deal.
have a great weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare.
Hare Hare Bo, Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you for joining. It was a wonderful evening.
Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.